Hi there, and welcome to Be a Global Citizen, the podcast that explores the concept of global citizenship through the lens of value-creating education. My name is Scott Bauer, and I'm a SOCA researcher and educator. I hope you find the discussions, stories, and insights on this podcast to be valuable and inspiring as we strive to become global citizens who are committed to living a contributive life. Enjoy.
I'm Barbara Best. I'm a community organizer. I am passionate about building ecosystems of care for young people and communities to thrive, and I'm so honored to be here today.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm so happy that one of our mutual friends connected us, like-minded people, and then sharing in this, incredible work of educating future generations. And this, what you just mentioned about ecosystem of care really resonates with me. And so I really want to learn more about the community work that you're doing, and then also understand what's really like the driving force behind all of these different initiatives that you do, and what gets you up in the morning. I think this dialogue that we're going to have is going to be really powerful, and will inspire a lot of people listening. So the first question is really to kind of have you share out what were some of the different milestones in your career, but it's not just for the professional side of things, but also any of the personal moments that helped you to kind of understand your own sense of self, that motivated you to get through maybe a tough patch, and whatever else that you'd like to share. I'm all ears, so please take it away.
Thank you so much, Scott. Really delighted to be here, and I love the stories that you're weaving together in this tapestry of stories of all of us serving in the education ecosystem and the difference, positive impact we can all make together. So I believe in the importance of a clear North Star. And my North Star is healthy interconnectedness. And as I mentioned, cultivating ecosystems of care to empower youth and communities to thrive, communities of joy, purpose, and connection. I am a community organizer by training. I spent many years at the Children's Defense Fund in Texas and nationally. And I have seen the power of collaborative action. When we were in Texas, we were working on health coverage for children, and there were 9 million uninsured children in the United States, and 1.5 million of them lived in Texas. And 90% had at least one working parent, but they could not afford or didn't receive health coverage through their employers. And so we worked on campaigns to expand the children's health coverage program, to enroll uninsured children in health coverage. We had an amazing team of servant leaders, brilliant leaders who I keep in touch with to this day. And it was just powerful to see partnerships. We partnered with schools to systematically identify uninsured children and link them with health coverage at local schools. And it was just amazing to see the impact. And I appreciated also your invitation to share kind of my personal journey. So when I was 26, I received an emergency phone call after a routine annual physical that changed the course of my life. And it still feels cloudy and the words are a blur, large ovarian tumor, emergency surgery. I mean, within a few days, I was in the hospital. My whole life turned upside down, and I did have to have emergency surgery. And I remember just this web of care all around me. My mom was in the room next door just praying fervently as I was going through the medical procedure. This nurses all around, leading me through my recovery. I mean, friends who put together a calendar every night. And this was within 6 months of my joining the Children's Defense Fund. And I poured myself into that work because I had seen how health insurance and this web of care had changed my life, had saved my life, really. And I want everyone to have access to the support and resources that we all need to thrive, for everyone to be safe, for everyone to be happy, for everyone to be healthy, cared for, loved, protected. So having that personal experience of the need for health coverage only makes me even more committed to creating the conditions for every young person and their communities to thrive.
That last piece that you shared about how it was through this personal experience of yours going through this emergency surgery that was quite shocking, but then you received this web of care that allowed you to really understand just how important and how urgently needed these services are, and that you then wanted to repay that debt of gratitude by really, like as you said, pouring into your community. I
Mhm.
find that when people are at the forefront really doing the work, we ask, how did they get to that point and why? And I think because they have that like deeper connection, and they are operating from a place of gratitude, right? And
Mhm.
understanding that impact, that's when you really start to see, this driving force kind of at play. And I'm so happy that you were able to receive those resources,
Yeah.
and then be surrounded by friends and family, because it can be very traumatizing, right? Or
Yeah.
very traumatic, let's say, the notice, and then the question of like, uh, will I be able to like get through this? I think it's
Yeah.
a maybe a question that a lot of families that you interacted with were asking themselves. And
Mhm.
like, and those are moments of vulnerability. Maybe could you speak about like how, like, when I think of like healthcare,
Yeah.
it seems very like, like policy and just kind of like, there's numbers and I don't know if I can pay this or that. But
Mhm.
then I think what the way you're coming at it, like it's coming from a heart space. And so
Yeah.
like, what's the role that like being able to interact with them and like really get to a state of like, understanding through vulnerability? Like, how does that
Mhm.
inform the work that you do?
Mm. Thank you so much for that. I think a lot about vulnerability and being open and responsive to the needs of another and standing in the place of care. And I remember when I was in Texas, there had been severe cutbacks to the Children's Health Insurance Program. Like 200,000 children had lost health coverage. And just the things that people were saying about families, like chip families drive Lexuses and Escalades, that kind of just people don't have a lot of sympathy for families that can't re-enroll every 6 months. These kind of narratives that were not compassionate. And I remember when all of these families and children lost their health coverage, we actually went to hospitals and clinics, and we mobilized a web of regional coordinators around the state, and we collected stories in every media market, true stories. In fact, it's a report that we issued that people have been asking for in recent days, given this moment. True stories of uninsured Texas children, and these stories were so powerful, of children who had lost their health coverage. And at the time, the most politically palatable way to cap enrollment was to really force families to reapply every 6 months to keep their coverage. And there's one family I will never forget, Tamika Scott and her son, Devontae Johnson. Devontae had advanced kidney cancer, and his mother did everything right. She filled out all of these applications, and she could not get him re-enrolled in Medicaid because of these requirements that families re-enroll every 6 months. The state couldn't keep up with the paperwork, and so an eligible child was disenrolled, and he had to go on to these experimental clinical trials. He lost a lot of weight. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't walk around. He was in a lot of pain, and he died. And it's just, I will never forget that story of Devontae Johnson. And his mother, Tamika Scott, is a very spiritual person. She had two other boys, and she felt this was Devontae's time, but at the same time, she didn't want any other child to have to suffer the way he did. And she had two other boys and was also mindful of all the other children who were struggling and getting health coverage. And so she wrote op-eds and she spoke out and she told her story. And we did get the Children's Health Insurance Program restored, but it was these family stories that really changed the narrative. And it was powerful to see the way legislators talked about families differently. Like eligible children should be able to get health coverage. We need to remove red tape and make it easier for families to get the health coverage that children need and deserve. But it was humanizing the stories and putting a face on the issue that really made the difference.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that story about Devante and Tamika, because yeah, um, centering the work on like the real like kind of like humanity,
Yeah.
right, of those that you're serving is so important, and can be lost in the bureaucracy of it all.
Yeah.
And then there's probably even deeper reasons for why that bureaucracy even exists in the first place that we may or may not get into. But I
Yeah.
think that what you shared was I don't know. I'm touched by the mother's actions though, because
Yeah.
she was like coming from the place of a mother, but she
Yes.
was also in a way transcending that, because she was now thinking of like not only her son, but the sons of other mothers, right?
Yes.
And she was now engaging in this form of activism, and civil service, right? Of like,
Right.
I need to do this so that no one else, no other mother, no other family has to, you know, suffer in the way that we suffered.
Mhm.
That, you know, suffering happens and like health issues arise, and it's kind of part of being a human, right?
Right.
As in terms of like, everyone gets sick and then everyone does eventually die. But as you said, right, like this could have been avoided, right? This,
Right.
you know, like this could have been treated much sooner, and that would have looked so different. So I think that is really important to like bring to the attention of others. But you know, one of the things that, you know, gets me thinking is like while the work of making sure that there are families that have this coverage, that are eligible, and that you are able to reach them is so vital, and that's like the, like, you know, kind of like front lines putting in that work. There's still like this part of me that's like, there's, I don't know, maybe like, I don't know. There's something like deeper in this whole process of like why the system itself is not working, you know, the way that it should, or you know, like in this case, it's with healthcare. But I know that you've also, you know, done a lot of work more recently in education. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, you know, there's the kind of like, there's like the short term or more immediate approach to it, but then there's like a larger kind of, you know, like larger transformational approach, I feel, when it comes to like healthcare, but then also when it comes to other areas. I don't know if this question is making sense, but I'm trying to say like, in terms of bridging like your work in like healthcare coverage, and the work that you did in Houston. I also know that you've shifted your attention and work towards more education related efforts. So I'm wondering, was there like a reason for that in particular? And does it perhaps have to do with like, I don't know, like trying to get to like the deeper roots of like how you could support more young families or families that are in need? Um, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Scott, for the question. And I do believe that we have to transform the way we see and support our young people. And it's about justice. It's about housing justice and education justice and healthcare justice and child and family well-being justice and immigration justice and transformative justice. It's about justice. So in terms of my journey, I was thrust into leadership roles at a very young age, and so I came to the Kennedy School to get a master's degree in my mid-30s. Our daughter Elena was 4. My husband Jaime quit his job as an engineer to help me get through school and to take care of Elena, so I've always, like, been so supported. I'm just so grateful for the love and support of my family. I would not be where I am today without the love and support of my family. And I worked at the Center for Public Leadership, and I worked with these amazing leaders from all over the world. And so I've seen the power of these courage communities and the image. I draw a lot of inspiration from nature, and I love I love trees. I love redwood trees. I think are you in California right now, or
Yeah, I'm in like the Los Angeles area.
you're in the Los Angeles area. And so in Northern California, those redwood trees, they're amazing. They date back to the time of the dinosaurs, and they can live for 2,000 years, and they're 350 feet tall, but their roots are only about 10 to 13 feet deep. Like, how is that even possible? How can a tree stand 350 feet tall with roots that are only 10 to 13 feet deep? The secret of their stability is that the roots are all interconnected. A vast network of support exists just beneath the surface so that even in the wildest of storms, these trees hold each other up. And that really is my view of how I see the work, building those strong root systems for young people and communities to flourish. So I had been at the Center for Public Leadership for 7 years and worked with amazing students and it really moves me how our students continue to support and uplift each other all over the globe. But I felt a pull to go back into child advocacy. And during the pandemic, I had the honor of working at a beautiful nonprofit organization that provided community based mentoring for young people impacted by foster care. And my biggest joy was our youth advisory board. 13 young people with 40 years of lived expertise in our programs. I went to every meeting, and there's this one conversation that stays with me, and it's about what is success as defined by young people. and young people had two beautiful insights, brilliant insights. Number one, being in a relationship is a success. Number two, they talked about growth, learning, goals. Having a caring adult mentor reflect back on your growth over time, recognizing that every person's journey is unique. And that is such precious wisdom. And I began wondering, how might we infuse this knowledge and like center lived expertise in how we design our systems? And how might we make impact at scale? And schools have unique convening power. The education ecosystem has unique convening power. So how could we embed practices like this into schools? And that's what brought me to the Harvard Graduate School of Education to pursue a doctor in education leadership. And I took Dr. Gretchen Brion-Meisel's year-long course on participatory action research for educational justice. I spent 2 days a week at Somerville High School. And then my capstone was all about cultivating school and community connectedness to empower youth to thrive. We did all these listening sessions at Reading Memorial High School with different affinity groups. And it was really moving to listen and learn from young people about building communities of cherished belonging in schools to empower our youth to thrive. So that's a little bit about my journey and sort of the path I've been on. And it's about centering youth and family voice and agency in leadership and decision making.
Wow. Thank you so much, Barbara. There's so much there, and I'm almost at like a loss as to where to begin. Maybe let's start with the trees,
Oh,
because
wonderful.
it's there's definitely this strong connection that you have to nature, and I feel like what you shared about the redwood trees was really beautiful, in the sense that like strong root systems, they help anchor, right, the tree, and allow it to continue to thrive for many years. I also didn't know about like I thought it'd be much deeper, but it's just like, I guess, how like tight knit it is. It's not really about the depth of it.
Right.
But yeah, could you speak about the I don't know, like what are your thoughts in regards to like the communities that you serve, and like how maybe like at present their connection to nature is, and if it is lacking, the ways in which you think people should, like, connect more to nature. Like, I guess, what's the role of connecting with nature as it
Mm.
relates to our own humanity?
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. I love connecting to nature as it relates to our own humanity. I love books, as you can see. I love Braiding Sweetgrass by Indigenous scientist Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. This is such a beautiful braid of stories to heal our relationship with the world. And she imagines a different relationship in which the land and the people are good medicine for each other. So she talks a lot about how all flourishing is mutual. And there's so much wisdom in this book. But this is our first year of, we have a community garden here in Cambridge, and it's been, Scott, it has been such a joy, and it centers me in this vision of vitality, just watching things grow and being in tune with the rhythm of the seasons. Like spring is a time of seed planting. What are the seeds that we most want to embody and act, bring forth in our relationships, in our systems, in our communities? Summer is a time of abundance. Autumn is a time of harvesting, and also a time of letting go and trusting in cycles of regeneration. And then winter is a time of rest, of storing up energy for the journey ahead. So I have found it really helpful to be attuned, being in the garden and just going to the garden every day, all year long, really attunes me to cycles of regeneration. And how do we bring that kind of wisdom and understanding into our systems? And also deepen connections of young people and communities with nature. I find nature to be a source of awe, of wonder, of transformation. It's just a source of wholeness. How do we work towards transformative wholeness of living and sort of reclaim relationality in our human relations and also with the natural world? So I
Mm.
appreciate the question very much.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you really like speaking to these cycles, right, that happen in nature, and that allow us to feel a part of something bigger. And what I find very troubling about society, currently, is that there's this growing sense of disconnect, right? That we have, not only with others, but really with ourselves.
Hmm.
And that can sometimes, stifle us, or like hinder us to really like really leaning into the full awe of like this present moment, right?
Mhm.
Or like the person in front of us, or the redwood tree that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And I find that that can also lead to great frustration. It could lead to us feeling upset, because I think the way that you speak about the community garden, or the way in which you interact with the seasons, and it's just like this wonderful like feeling of appreciation that like I get to be a part of this, right? That
Mhm.
it's all interconnected. Um, but when it comes to like maybe young people in particular, since it seems to be the population that you work with most closely, how is it that you get you know these young people to like fully connect with it? Is it just time and like immersion, or is
Mhm.
there something more that you do to like kind of bring to their attention that gets them to really like put in that much more effort to like have that feeling of like wholeness or like belonging that you're speaking to?
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you so much. I've been thinking a lot about cultivating more joy and compassion in our relationships, in our communities, and our systems. It was interesting in my doctoral studies to learn more about the brain research that the brain actually has a negativity bias, especially when we're stressed. We can over identify with challenges and overlook aspects of our work, our relationships, our lives that bring us joy and energy. So when I was in the school district, it's a hard time to be in K-12, and you just as a community organizer, I was sort of new to K-12, and I had a lot of empathy and compassion for the team. Like, you just never know what's going to hit you. So we would intentionally, at the beginning of meetings, start with a simple question: where are you finding joy? And that simple question would change the energy of the meeting and shift to a sense of possibility. I have a practice of joy spotting, which I've been very open in sharing with young people, with families, with community leaders, a children's cabinet that we organized in the community where I was doing my doctoral work, um, to savor simple moments of joy and beauty as I go about my day. So a beautiful sunset, a beautiful sunrise, moments in the garden, a great conversation with someone, a very meaningful connection, a kind and encouraging note, to actually savor those moments of joy and positivity. I have a 10 breath practice where I will, on my belly, count 10 breaths and take 10 deep breaths in and out. That holds a positive experience in my body so that joy becomes a resource and I can resource myself. And then that builds capacity and resilience for whatever challenges I might face in a day. So that's been interesting, thinking about how to bring more joy and compassion into our systems. The other is compassion. I've done a lot of work on fierce self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff's work at the University of Texas at Austin, that compassion has a tender side and also a fierce, protective side that helps us to set healthy boundaries, make positive changes in our lives, speak out against injustice. So I've shared with, young people, families, communities, educators, embodied self-compassion practices with the three components of self-compassion: mindfulness, awareness of the present moment without judgment, common humanity, and self-kindness. So we'll actually call in a moment of difficulty, 3 or 4 on a 10-point scale, nothing too much that's going to shut you down, and just acknowledge it. This is a moment of difficulty. And then we move into common humanity. But life's full of difficulties. I'm not the first or the last to experience a setback. Others have felt this way too. I'm not alone. And then self-kindness, using soothing touch, because that helps us tap into mammalian care systems. You can put your hand on your heart. I like to do a fist with a palm, strength with love. You could do this to cultivate a feeling of safety. Put your hands on your cheeks. I mean, whatever. Hold your own hand and offer yourself whatever it is that you need. May I have kindness. May I be strong. May I live in abundance. You got this. I've got your back. Together, we're going to make it through. So bringing practices like this into our communities so that we can resource ourselves, I think is makes a tremendous impact in shifting energy and creating a sense of possibility.
Undoubtedly. I love that. And such positive messaging that I think young people, like the younger the better, need to really engrave in their hearts. And then also there's certain like it sounds like tools or practices, right? Where they can in a way kind of like just it's it sounds almost like they're kind of like programming, right? This is how I get from one state of maybe negativity to a more positive state of, appreciation and joy.
Yes.
And I think the society that, we find ourselves in seemingly is just more like default mode negativity. And
Yes.
so, we, you know, experience that, I think especially as adults, then bringing that into their homes, unwittingly, right? Because it's difficult, the realities of life. But I find that, young people like, you know, grow up with, these conflicting messages, and then kind of then it comes down to this like almost like rewiring at a certain point where they don't give themselves that permission to really be kind to themselves. They don't take notice of the ways in which their emotions sit with their body, and they have difficulty taking a full breath, or feeling that warmth from either a conversation or, a hug, right? Some kind of like physical contact. And so all of that is really important work in terms of like what we really provide for young people in terms of like words of affirmation, praise, giving them hope, joy, and valuable tools like you were sharing that help them to really reconnect with themselves so that they can then connect with others. And then, your discussion about compassion, I felt was really, really meaningful, because, again, I think we tend to really like gravitate towards those who are compassionate, right? That there's something about them we can, really confide in them, right? This trust. And, but like compassion is it's a difficult thing, right? Just, I don't think, you know, it's always like a two-way street. But I'm thinking about this one. He's a Japanese educator and reformer, and this was in like kind of mid 20th century. His name's Josei Toda, and he spoke a lot about compassion, but from the lens of like, well, if it's too difficult to be compassionate, you can actually substitute compassion with courage, and kind of thinking it's, two sides of the same coin. But sometimes if you need to have the courage to take those actions, to really put yourself out there, to really, to make that cause. And that then takes you along the pathway towards compassion, right? Sometimes there's like this kind of, I don't know, stop like of like, how do I get to that point? And so then, I felt like, the way he framed that was really helpful because, the work that you're doing does require a lot of courage, right? As if, there's like this kind of stream of, you know, negativity, and we're all just salmon trying to swim upstream. When, actually, why does that have to be the case? Well, we can create new streams, through these efforts, and especially coming at it from a community lens. So, I feel like, we've been speaking a lot about the importance of like compassion within relationships and building these like healthy, interconnected relationships, right? That you mentioned at the start. And there was you mentioned about like some kind of like youth poll where you asked them the question of like what is success, and I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about that because I was really impressed that they came up with being in a relationship and like growth or like the learning goals. I was hoping if you can maybe speak a little bit more to that, because and like so like what does it mean to be in a healthy relationship is one thing, and then also in terms of like what does it mean to like grow or to thrive amidst everyone's unique and difficult realities. Yeah, how did you guys respond to that poll when they told you this is what we're struggling with or this is what we want? And then how do you respond to that as the adults and wanting to empower them to be successful?
Mm. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you for these beautiful reflections. And I also love your calling and courage. And I believe I've been thinking a lot, what does this moment call us to? And I believe we are called to be more courageous. And it does a lot of this work is countercultural, and it's having the strength to counter. So how do we show up with awareness, courage, kindness each day, and bring more compassion in our communities? Thank you so much for that insight. And in terms of I think a lot about seed planting. So the work during the pandemic at this beautiful organization, um, providing community-based mentoring for young people impacted by foster care. This conversation, what does success look like? how is success defined by young people? And this beautiful insight, being in a relationship is a success. Um, Growth, learning, goals, having a caring adult mentor reflect back on your journey over time, recognizing that every person's journey is unique. And this nonprofit was a beautiful, like a bright spot, right? It was just amazing. It was all about, it was creating those relational connections. It was creating that web to surround young people with communities of love and joy. It was working. It was making a tremendous impact in the lives of our young people. But there's like 400,000 young people impacted by foster care in the United States, and began wondering how to make impact at scale and how could we embed these practices into policies and systems to be youth focused, to be trauma inclusive, to be healing centered, to be strength based, to model, as we are and as you are, um, generous listening and courageous action. So that's really what propelled me to go to the Doctor in Education Leadership. And I loved working in Reading Public Schools, where I was for all 3 years. And the listening sessions work was really powerful. And it started with, I was helping to build a children's cabinet, bringing together 25 intergenerational cross-sector leaders to empower youth to thrive. So we'd have business leaders and faith leaders and school leaders and teachers and young people and parents, like a really wide cross-section. And we did a needs assessment. What are the issues we want to work on together? And the 2 issues identified were, number 1, accessing resources, and number 2, addressing relational aggression and mean behavior. I thought it took tremendous courage to name that. And so we started with parent listening sessions. There was a group of parents, middle school parents, who really wanted to be heard. And we did these listening sessions at the public library in town. And it was very deep, open-hearted listening, like what are young people experiencing, and for parents to really speak their authentic truth. And parents were saying, like, what is bullying, and what is kids being kids, and where do I step in, and where do I hold back? And young people are playing a huge role in each other's lives since the pandemic, especially, and so supporting our young people in navigating relationships, like what's yours to hold, what's not yours to hold. What are the qualities that you want to see in authentic, trusting relationships? So when I moved into my residency, I talked to a number of community leaders and parent leaders and young people and said, this is what our parents are saying. So how do we move forward and take action on this? And that's where we came up with the idea of these youth listening sessions and a multi-pronged strategy to cultivate school and community connectedness, with youth listening sessions, with family and community engagement strategies, with a community-wide strategy to prioritize and coordinate youth mental health services. And then also healthy relationships in the workplace. So like a multi-pronged strategy at multiple levels of the system. And the listening sessions with our young people were amazing. So we did maybe 12 listening sessions, reached about 167 students, different affinity groups, and created a really youth-centered space with a lot of turn and talks, time to connect, and started with highs and lows. Where do you feel connected? Where do you not feel connected? What gets in the way of building a community of belonging? And what would it look like? What would it feel like to build a community of belonging? And it was really powerful, and we learned a lot. And one of the things I'm proud of is that the work has continued beyond my residency. And I think we've introduced a new pattern of changing how the community listens to and learns from young people and from parents, so that when the school district makes a decision or pursues a new pathway, they first go to those who are most directly impacted. Just last week, I got an email from the Reading Coalition saying they'd done a leadership town hall, bringing young people together across affinity groups, across the school community. Like 100 young people came, and they announced $4,500 in mini grants for young people to lead projects to cultivate school and community connectedness. And they're going to do a youth town hall. So I'm really proud that the work continues, and it's about collaborative action, and it's about centering the voices of young people and families who breathe life into learning.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that incredible initiative. And I'm so happy to hear that not only was there tremendous learning and collaboration within that immediate cohort with all the collaborators, but there was this continuity, right? This sense that like the work continues on because of how it was implemented and how priorities were set and how people really truly listened and understood, each other. And I think, the the role that listening plays, I think, just in our current times is that it allows people to feel seen in a way. As I say, you're listening to someone and they feel seen.
Yes.
But like it's really a powerful message that's being conveyed that what what you're experiencing and what your current reality is truly matters,
Hmm.
and that when someone feels like they've been truly listened to, there's like almost like this kind of like weight that kind of gets lifted off, that they feel like, okay, like suddenly the pressures of this world are a little bit more bearable, because now it's no longer just me dealing with it. And so the work of creating a kind of space to engage others, truly understanding where they're at, that's so important, because you can't actually make any long lasting change if you don't identify and then call out what truly is the biggest issue, right, that is at hand. And yeah, and then grounding everything in their um, in their voices, like the voice. I think you mentioned that, how that ties into like building stronger relationships moving forward. Yeah, all of that I think is just, it's really like creating the kind of like model that more organizations should really strive towards. And so this, the work that you're describing about like really listening deeply, does this tie into like the work that you're currently doing with like, I think I recall there was like this organization called Convu. Is that
Yes.
like, does that kind of bring us up to like where you're currently at in
Yes.
terms of like your work? Could you maybe speak a little bit about what that organization does, and the role that like listening plays in it, and how you've been able to also draw from all of these previous experiences of like community organizing, and yeah, working, I mean, and building kind of like really robust and diverse teams to address issues rooted in like justice and belonging. So how does that all kind of converge in this present moment for you?
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much for that beautiful question, Scott, and your beautiful reflections. And I love your insight on listening. What you said resonates so deeply. Listening makes people feel seen. Listening makes people feel that they matter, that their voices are important. And that's absolutely what we're doing at Convu in our work to expand capacity for peer coaching and deep listening, that we all need to thrive. And so Convu has had like proof of concept. We've made positive community impact through the Harvard University Peer Coaching Initiative and Mass General Hospital. And now we're excited to expand peer coaching in schools, workplaces, communities. And it's really about building capacity for authentic, trusting relationships that we all need to thrive. And I have personally experienced the power of peer coaching in the Doctor in Education Leadership cohort at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. We all had peer coaches, and it's been really moving to me how we continue to support each other after graduation. And really, in this moment, micro communities are our lifelines, and relationships are our lifeline in this moment, and we can support and uplift one another. And in my experience, often the challenge doesn't change, but what changes is the sense of being listened to and being part of a relationship that has reciprocity, where you both listen and are listened to, where you can practice listening generously and speaking courageously. And we've got a sort of a method that walks people through the process of both coaching and being coached. So you first open up a gap, let a little sunshine in. What's a issue that you want to focus on? What's coming up for you? What's something you'd like to talk about today? And then generating insight. What would better look like? What are you really longing for? What are you really looking for? Who and what supports you on your unique path? And then taking action. Um, and again, it's often the challenge and the context remains the same, but what shifts is your mindset or your heart set, or where possibilities are popping up. Because what we focus on expands. Where are possibilities popping up? Where um, might we shift and focus our energy and attention? So it's been really beautiful to see the power of authentic, trusting relationships, and we're excited to spread these practices. And I've been moved in my own cohort, and then hearing some of the testimonials from Massachusetts General Hospital, that the simple practice of listening is really transformative, and it's changing people's relationships in all aspects of their lives. And that's really moving. And in the age of AI, I believe that human connection is precious. And so how do we create these spaces where we can listen, learn, and connect with each other?
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's a really important work that you're doing, truly, because, I find that um, the kind of, I mean, not to get like really political, but it just seems like what we see playing out on the political arena are just like, two sides that are just unwilling to listen to each other. And that's causing, mayhem and destruction. And so then what you're speaking about in terms of like the work of doing peer coaching, creating these micro communities, and really putting forward this value of like to listen to another is to like, you didn't frame it this way, but I understand it as like to listen to another is to like respect the other's dignity, and really extend to them that kind of graciousness that like, yeah, what they say matters. You know, one thing that comes to my mind though is that the we're not really taught how to listen well, and then we kind of look at like, oh, because we're not able to really listen well at this moment, then it's like it just seems like it's like almost like a muscle that's like atrophied, and then it's just so much more difficult to gain traction, to really build that up, to sustain that level of concentration or focus. And you said a phrase that I thought was really profound. It's like what we focus on expands, I think is what you said. And then I think of like focus as like attention, and we kind of live in a world of like the attention economy where everything is kind of geared towards like how much screen time various different corporations can get us to do. And so like, what are some of the challenges that you face at Convu, in terms of like, I don't know if the word is combating that or addressing that, but it's an undeniable reality for all young people. And so like it just seems like this behemoth of a, kind of situation where like it's like social media that doesn't really want us to like listen, it's just consume. And so how does, yeah, I'm wondering where that kind of rests with you. How do you wrestle
Yeah.
with that?
Oh, I love that. No, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you. And I love what you said about listening is respecting someone's dignity. I love that. So beautifully said. And I think a lot about how do we open up a space in our community, because there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of divisiveness in the world today. So how do we open up a space? And I was really moved in these youth listening sessions. Young people were very present, and I spoke to a number of groups: Rise Against Cancer, the Politics Club, the Gender and Sexuality Alliance, Students of Color and Allies for Equity, Inclusion, and Justice, the captains of the sports teams. I mean, I talked to a wide variety of students, and they were so present because young people want to be listened to. And my experience is that people want to be listened to. And so to create the space, we did hold a facilitator training at the Next Practice Institute, Mobius Executive Leadership Next Practice Institute. And it was really moving. We had a great group of facilitators, ranging from an amazing advocate working with nurses in Maine, Nurse Flourish, to people working in higher ed on transformational dialogue, to people working in the private sector and activists and organizers. It was a wonderful range. And so we went through the facilitator training, which was really rich. And as you said earlier, to build the muscle, like we have these skills within us, but we need to reclaim this lost art of listening. So even just giving it some attention, what gets in the way of my listening? What can I do to be a better listener? How do I be more present? What are things I need to work on? And we also did work on culture transformation, which I really appreciated. And I hadn't thought about culture in this way, of moving from stuck patterns to generative patterns. And I find that small gestures can really make a positive impact in shaping culture. So I was really energized, and I've been posting about it on LinkedIn. So people have reached out. I talked to an amazing organizer a couple weeks ago, and I was really moved by her. She wants to be trained as a facilitator, and she said investing in each other's leadership development is an act of resistance, and that really stays with me in this moment. That building our capacity, learning to listen, learn, and connect from each other is just a great thing that we can be doing in this moment. And I think there's a hunger for it and a longing for it. and to do that work in community, that we can I have learned personally that we change, learn, heal, and grow in relationship. And so reclaiming that relationality in the sense that we all belong to each other, I think is the ultimate goal, really.
Yeah, thank you so much for that really thoughtful response, Barbara. And having those like spaces where people can come face to face and really engage and be heard and feel empowered through that process, I think is really important. And then these opportunities to kind of, uh, I don't know, maybe like nudge others in that kind of like positive direction through the kind of sharing out of like, the posts that you were talking about and really kind of making it clear, like the direction, like, hey, this is something that borders on like a kind of movement of really reclaiming that sense of listenership or
Yeah.
sense of like kind of where you put your attention. I think is really crucial, and so the kind of like building up of our own kind of like muscles to
Uh-huh.
listen, or really deciding connection like with others and building relationships is important. I feel like we've kind of touched upon a lot of different aspects that could potentially qualify as like part of like what it means to be a global citizen. But I wanted to first ask, just in terms of like the concept itself, if this is something that you think about often, either in the past or more recently, or maybe not at all. But just wondering kind of how it lands with you at this moment, like what it means to be a global citizen.
Oh, I love the question of what it means to be a global citizen, and I actually I love poetry and I love the arts. My mom was a brilliant educator and developer of people who had a passion for serving multilingual learners and educational freedom, and she was a daughter of Italian immigrants, and so she would inspire her students with poetry, and I actually think in poems. So when I saw this question about what does it mean to be a global citizen, I actually thought of this poem in Lakesh, which I printed out. It's Mayan-inspired wisdom, and it's written by Luis Valdez in 1971 in Lakesh. I am you or you are me. Tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. Si te hago daño a ti, if I do harm to you, me hago daño a mí mismo. I do harm to myself. Si te amo y respeto, if I love and respect you, me amo y respeto yo. I love and respect myself. And that to me ultimately is what it means to be a global citizen. It is to look in the eyes of every other person and see my other me. And the way I think about the work is, how am I honoring in Lakesh in my life? Where am I living up to in Lakesh, and where am I not living up to in Lakesh? And that's where the work is. It's in the gap. So that to me, that this is from an ethnic studies class that I took at the Harvard Graduate School of Education with Dr. Cristina Villarreal, a brilliant educator and scholar, practitioner leader, and that really stays with me. I think about in Lakesh every day, but that is what it means to be, to me, to be a global citizen, and to be compassionate, to be open and responsive to the needs of another, and to stand in the place of care.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that poem. I love how it's also like bilingual, and
Mhm.
that like there was like two different languages, and that as if it was to like to like reinforce the same message, but from like different heart spaces, right? Like
Mhm.
expanding the audience, but also really just kind of affirming that this sense that like I am I'm seeing a reflection of myself, or an aspect of who I am, part of my own humanity, and I need to respect that, and love that. I think is really is a really powerful message, and it's this kind of like wisdom that we see, I think, in a lot of different cultures, and like I think of like Ubuntu, right? I think of what else was there? Um, Oh, like namaste as well, I
Yeah,
think, about that.
yeah.
And then I come from like a Buddhist tradition from like Nichiren Buddhism,
Mhm.
where, we speak a lot about everyone's inherent state of Buddhahood, and
Mhm.
that there's this incredible equality that is preached from the Lotus Sutra, that everyone is a Buddha.
Yeah.
And so, to kind of greet from afar someone as if you're seeing the original Buddha. That's the
Mhm.
spirit. that we kind of look at this. And so, and then the interconnectedness piece comes across really strong in this poem. So I really appreciate you for sharing that, for like
Mm.
acting it out as well.
Mm.
It's extra special.
Oh,
And yeah, and this has just been a really lovely opportunity to learn more about the important work that you're doing, but also like how I think it's very evident, like you have quite the list of various accomplishments and successes and community organizing and building out new programs, but at the same time you're deep in this reflection of like what is the work that needs to be done right now,
mm.
and how can I model that and not have it be just a line on a resume saying this is what I do, but this is who I am kind of
Mhm.
perspective. And I really respect that, and for myself try to also embody that spirit moving forward. So the last question that I want to ask you is actually like a book recommendation, or it could be a movie recommendation. But I know you've already shared out one book a little while back. But is there any other books that you'd like to share with us?
I would, yes. I do. I love to read. I do love Teachings on Love by Thich Nhat Hanh, the great teacher and peace builder. And just thinking about the seeds that we can water and cultivate every day of love, compassion, joy, equanimity, the interconnected dimensions of love. I also love this book. Just thinking about being a global citizen, I feel very drawn to the idea of spiritual kinship and community. So I love this book, Casting Indra's Net by Dr. Pamela Ayo Yetundi. And she talks about really reclaiming the sense that we all belong to each other and that the only hope of our survival really is adopting each other, formally or informally, as kin. And that really moves me. And as I grow kind of deeper in years and life experience, I come back to this idea of reclaiming relationality and loving kinship, that we all belong to each other. And we all have shared humanity. We're all part of a vast interconnected web, but the web is very delicate right now and needs to be handled with care and with love and with compassion. And so I'm so thankful to you, Scott. This has been a joy, and I really appreciate these stories you are weaving together and igniting the life force of compassion that connects us all. So thank you.